All right, so transatlantic slave trade. All right, so that's the triangle there. Slaves were taken from Africa, but Africa got, goods and stuff, that the whites brought to sell to them. So the slaves were used to buy those things, right? So when the slaves were taken to the Americas, then sugar and those other things produced in the Americas was taken to England. Then the things again were moved from, the goods and all of that were now moved again from England back to Africa. So that was how the slave trade went, the transatlantic slave trade. Pretty crazy, but that's how it went. Here is how they were chained. Right, so you can see the exhibit. This is actually Badagry slave trade, Badagry Heritage Museum. So this is how the slaves were chained back in the days. Arms, legs, pretty crazy, but just goes to show you what people went through at that time. Alright, so some other images showing you stuff about Africa. It's the different coasts. You have Slave Coast, that's Badagry. You have Gold Coast, Ghana. You had what other coast again? Cote d'Ivoire, yeah, Ivory Coast, right? So all the different coasts in Africa, Africa was just labeled as a place to collect different things, right? So that's the pyramid of Giza, that in Egypt. Yeah, you can see that. That's the phoenix head. You can see all that. So what else are we looking at? Yeah, the Egyptians. This is Dahomey Empire. Dahomey Empire was the place. It's current Benin Republic, right? They have a border with Badagry. So a lot of those slave trade people, were going back and forth, both Badagry and Dahomey then, right? So that's Oyo Empire photo of somewhere in the north. That's the Kingdom of Songhai. So just mentioning some top empires, some things that would make you think about how powerful Africa was back then. Established kingdoms, civilizations back then. Just seeing all of this, just makes you really think that, man, were we really backward? Africa wasn't. Okay, so we move on. These are more images. Slave trade, when they come, that was showing the river where they come. So these are the slaves, how they were tied, how they captured them. So they go to fight war with another community. All right, so they take slaves from there, then tie those slaves even with their kids. You can see kids in this picture. They tie the slaves even with their kids. So one village goes to fight another village. That village overpowers that village and they take them as slaves. Okay, so they take them as slaves and they now gather them in places and sell them to these white guys. So the white guys come with their ships, land, buy up these slaves and take them back, to produce stuff. Pretty crazy. Human beings for stuff, right? So that's it. You can see the ships, they are coming. They want to take those guys that are available to be sold. So they come like that, take them, and they ride for months, till they get to their destination. Okay, so we also had the trans-Sahara slave trade. So you could also see these white people, slaves. They were through the Sahara guys, white, light-skinned ladies up, in Sahara. So they also sold them too. So transatlantic, the West African side, mainly from West Africa, right? Slaves from West Africa, and trans-Saharan, you had slaves from the upper part, the Sahara part, the upper part of Africa, the light-skinned folks, right? So here we're looking at the tools of the trade, capture, how they captured them and how they hooked them. You can see that's how they kept them. So that's the painting of it. So you can see the chains that they fixed around their necks. Fix the chains around their necks. Over 10 to 12 million slaves were picked from Africa, down to the Americas, Brazil, to work. So these are rejected slaves. You can see them. So these ones were rejected. If you look up there, you can see the inspection. That's inspection of slaves. So you can see them looking at. Those are women, African women being sold. So they're inspecting them, and I start telling, oh, good. See, strong, can fight, all those kind of funny things. Can fight, can carry, just pushing the market so that, they have those guys that are willing to buy. This slave trade market, one of the markets in Badagry, used to be called Vlekete market, I think. One of the slave trade markets in Badagry, where those white guys come to look at slaves. So you can see them. You can see the white guys inspecting slaves tied to, those sticks and all. Crazy times, Crazy times. Yeah, so these were the things they were exchanging for slaves. Can you imagine? Bottles. Yeah, so Manila, medium of exchange, right? Manila, bottles, chains. These are the things that were being exchanged for slaves. Okay, so like that bottle number, I think it's about 10 slaves for one bottle. 10 slaves or 100 slaves, I don't remember. That 10 slaves or so, or 100, something pretty crazy for just one bottle. All right, so like 5 bottles there might be like, maybe 500 slaves, really crazy stuff. So that's, depiction of it, a gang of slaves, right? Tied with the white guys, leading them through. So you can see this, that's a picture of slaves. Slaves in the Barracoon. That's like a slave market. Just crazy stuff. Yeah, so what was that? I think that was a slave market or something. Yeah, so when they get to the point of no return, that building in the background is the first story building in Nigeria, right? Yeah, or let me just say first story building in Badagry. It was one of the first story buildings ever built in this country. So it was built by the Anglican Communion, So, but it was around that same area where you had those slaves, So first story building with the church. So many of all those missionaries were actually involved in this business. You're saying missionary, we're bringing church and all, but many of them were doing, slave trade. All right. So moving human beings up and down, selling them. Pretty crazy times. Yeah, so these were all artworks depicting the different slave issues happening at that time. So what do we have here? Oh, that's one slave. Yeah, slaves being displayed, slaves hooked, and moved. Yeah, this was a real photo. Right? That one there was a real photo. So these are the kind of things they used to hook them, their legs, and also they don't move. Yeah, so pretty crazy stuff. Oh, swords. These were real swords used at that time. Those swords were used. Those guns were used, for wars to capture more slaves. And also sold. All right. At that same time, people also sold, slaves to buy these things. These kind of crazy things that we see. People also sold slaves to buy these guns and these weapons. So these are the chains to hook them and all that. Yeah, it's some crazy stuff. All the restriction tools, chains and all. These are the men, some of the major guys, some major men involved in slave trade at that time. This one was buried here, one of them was buried there. It's funny. They came in as, hey, want to preach, want to help you, hey, religious stuff. And they just started doing businesses of selling people. Very funny. Very, 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 very funny. Bristol City. Yeah, another guy. And another guy. These guys made so much money. They were involved in this craft for years. Years. Alright. They did all they could to make so much money from the slave trade business, and all they could so that people remain slaves to be sold. Yeah. So those were adverts for slaves. Imagine 158 Negroes to be sold, cargo to be sold, slave adverts. These were adverts, just the same way we run adverts now, right? I can imagine these guys running adverts on Facebook, say, hey, come and buy slaves, that kind of thing. Adverts for slaves. Crazy stuff, just, I don't know, man. How people were buying people, right? Come on. Man. Crazy stuff. Well, if you like this video, please share. Let everyone know what happened here. So this is a slave that was being punished, tied, and usually flogged. Sometimes they'll just hang them like that for weeks. These are slaves inside the ship. They can be inside this ship for months. They are fed once a day, water once a day. That's one of the ports, is when the slave, ports and stuff. Crazy stuff happening at the time. Where was that? Yeah, so slave, I think this is a slave family, right? Probably captured family, I think. Yeah, so that's the ship. Can you see that ship? That's a model of the ship. Okay, so that's the model of the ship. This was a safe, established, or a safe for the administrators, back then in Badagry. This place was established many centuries, many years ago. So that's the safe that we had back in the days. So that's the slaves looking at from one of the ships. Yeah, so you can see them, see the way they arrange them down, loading of a ship with human beings, right? They're fed once a day, giving water once a day. Many of them will die, and they will throw them out of the ship, because they could afford to throw them away. They were getting them really very cheap. They pick a bottle and you give them like several hundred slaves, right? They give you some type of metal and iron or a mirror, and you give them many slaves, right? So they're making so much money. They could afford to actually throw away the slaves, so they threw some of them overboard, to lighten the ship when they had taken so much, and when they threw them overboard, so you can see them, so slaves that were thrown overboard, right? You can see them here, slaves overboard. Many of them would drown and die, because they filled the ship with too many of them, and they just continue really cheap. So slaves, you can see them now.